welcome to Legal Affairs. My name is Diamond Liddy, and I'm the public defender of the 19th Judicial Circuit. We have someone brand new on our scene for our children and for good things that happen to the children on the Treasure Coast, and I'm very proud to introduce Shanique Maynard, correct?
Yes, Shanique.
Okay, and Shanique, give us your formal title, if you will.
So I'm the Executive Director of the Roundtable of St. Lucie County.
Okay, and there's people out there that have never heard of the Roundtable, but we're not going to get to that yet.
Okay.
You were, of course, I know your daddy and your family and stuff, but I had never met you, but you grew up in this area, as I did.
I grew up here. Well, you know, my dad is born and raised here, and went up to New Jersey and met my mom, and came back down, and they started their ministry, Dr. Donna Mills and Reverend Kenneth Mills.
Right.
And I was about in 3rd grade and graduated from Westwood High School and went on from there. So I'm a Fort Pierce girl.
Okay. Well, you went on to big things. So let's, if you don't mind, just take a moment and tell us about your background and where you've been and how you came to be Executive Director of the Roundtable.
Gosh, what a path it's been. I graduated from Westwood High School in 1994, go Panthers, and went off to Howard University in Washington, D.C. After I left Howard, I went to law school at Yale Law School, where I graduated in 2001. And when I left Yale, I went to a law firm, sort of a sweatshop law firm in Washington, D.C. I worked there for 6 or 7 years. And in 2003, a lot of people know my family was hit with a tragedy when my brother was murdered here in Fort Pierce.
Right.
That really fundamentally changed my life. And it made me realize that even though I'd been blessed and given all these opportunities.
Yeah, the Yale Law School's a big deal.
Huge opportunity. But I wasn't really sure that I was using it the way that I felt called in my life to use those blessings. So I applied. I decided I wanted to be a prosecutor, applied to a couple of offices, and was blessed to be given the opportunity to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Florida in Miami as a federal prosecutor. I went there in 2007. I was there from 2007 to 2014. Okay. I worked in the Miami office, and then I worked in the West Palm Beach office for about 5 years. And then I worked in the Fort Pierce office at the new federal courthouse on Orange Avenue in US 1. And while at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I did a number of cases, human trafficking, civil rights, drug cases, cases against child predators. Just was a wonderful experience. Obviously, the violence in Fort Pierce has been something that has personally affected me. And over the last couple of years, we've seen some escalation with that.
Oh, yeah.
About a year ago, Representative Larry Lee started the Restoring the Village movement. There were town hall meetings. And as a federal prosecutor, we wanted to know what could we do to assist the community. I did some research and learned about a federal model from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention on combating gang violence. So some best practices nationwide that we could bring here. I approached Representative Lee and former Chief Sean Baldwin and said, hey, let's take a team, let's go to this training and represent Fort Pierce and see what we can learn that we could bring back to this community. So in March or April of last year, a team of 5 or 6 of us went to be trained by the National Gang Center on this federal model.
Wow. Where was that, in Washington?
That was in Texas. They did it in Texas. They invited 10 communities to send a team, and our team consisted of former Chief Sean Baldwin, Superintendent of Schools Janelle Yost, Wadia Wilson, the Chief Probation Officer for DJJ, Clint Sperber, the Deputy Administrator of the Health Department, Christine Epps, who was the former Executive Director of the Roundtable, and myself. That was really the first time I'd really heard of the Roundtable. And so much of what we learned in that training about how community leaders need to come together to address violence issues in the community, it was very inspiring to us because it was things the Roundtable has been working on for quite some time.
Right.
And the Gang Center was very impressed by our community because not many communities have a coalition of leaders already working together.
Oh, right.
To collaborate.
I say that every show. Oh my gosh, we're so blessed.
We really,
to have
are.
have people that work together and make great things happen.
We really, really are.
And it's not that way everywhere
It's
else.
not. It's not that way everywhere. So we came back from the training. I was very excited about it. I was very excited about the roundtable. I sat down with Christine and said, hey, I want to know, sort of how you've made your transition into doing what you're doing. I may be looking to make a transition soon. And she said, well, Friday's my last day. Why don't you apply for my job?
Oh, my gosh.
And so I said, well, maybe I'll think about it. And I talked with my husband and my family, and I decided to apply and was blessed and fortunate to be offered the position.
Oh, my God. Well, I mean, that is a quantum leap. I mean, you're out, not in the courtroom.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I'm very impressed with your background and very impressed with what you've done thus far. But let's go to the burning question. What is the Executive Roundtable, and how did it come to be?
Okay.
And then we'll talk about what it's doing.
The Executive Roundtable is a coalition of community leaders, chief executive level leaders in our community. They represent a wide variety of agencies, from funders like Children's Services Council and United Way, to law enforcement, to the schools, to health. The economic community is represented, and we have the chief level leader of these agencies come together to come up with a common agenda in St. Lucie County for how we want to allow children to succeed in this community.
Right.
It's very data-based, data-driven. We are constantly looking at all of the data in our county surrounding areas like poverty, education, violence, health, looking at the trends to see what's going on with our kids, and trying to find best practices to address problem areas. And really the point is to enhance protective factors in our community, those factors that help children succeed, and to decrease the risk factors.
Right.
Those things that make it harder for children to succeed. So that's really what the Roundtable is. It's about 20 years old, started in 1995.
Now, was this statutorily mandated? Is it something this circuit just came up with, or are we unique in all the world, as the little prince would say?
We are fairly unique. It's not statutorily mandated. It is 1995, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention decided to, under a grant, fund a number of sites throughout the country to sort of try this idea of bringing leaders outside of their individual silos together to form a community that supports children. So we had national experts come down in 1995. I think there were 5 agencies that started it. I know it was DCF, Department of Juvenile Justice, I believe the City of Port St. Lucie, the Fort Pierce Police Department, and some other agency that I can't think of at this moment. And over time, they just built upon that. And what's really unique is of the, and I don't know how many sites there were when OJJDP began it, but we are one of the few sites that
is still in existence,
that was able to maintain it when the funding went away. Which is very, very exciting.
Well, how is it funded now, then?
So it's funded by the members. So we have 27 agency members, and like I said, all across the board. And each member pays a certain level of dues, depending on their agency size and that sort of thing. And that's the bulk of our administrative funding. And then we have a number of initiatives that we do, whether it's Kids at Hope or this gang strategy, Bridges Out of Poverty. We have a number of initiatives, and those are grant funded. We apply for grants to carry out those initiatives. And
you're paid out of that money, obviously.
Yes.
Your salary.
Yes.
As far as the administration of the Executive Roundtable, are you it, or are there other people that administratively serve it?
So we have 2 full-time staff members, myself, and we have a project coordinator, Kim Thomas.
Okay.
So if anyone ever calls the Roundtable for information, they often will speak with Kim. We also have, for our different initiatives, the ones that are grant funded, we have a paid coordinator.
Okay.
More likely than not. So, for example, Kids at Hope is one of our biggest, most long-standing initiatives in the county. And
what is Kids at Hope?
Kids at Hope is a strategic cultural framework designed to engage an entire community in building a place where kids can succeed. So it really aligns with the mission of the Roundtable very well. We brought it to this county, I think, around 2006. And we have, the school district is on a 5-year plan to make all schools in the county Kids at Hope schools. Many of our agencies have been trained in Kids at Hope, and it's very exciting to see a community engage in, this is what we believe about kids. So the philosophy is that we believe that all kids are capable of success, no exceptions. And it's sort of easy to say.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of, yeah, we believe all kids are capable of success. But it's not
but,
right. But then there's that one.
Yeah, right.
But it's a philosophy that says not just as individuals do we believe this, but are our community agencies showing that, as a community, are we really believing that kids are capable of success? And if we believe it, how do we go about connecting with kids? How do we sustain meaningful relationships with them? Because all the data shows that kids do well when they have meaningful, sustainable relationships with caring adults. And also, how do we teach our kids to, and we call it time travel, articulate what they want to do in their futures, right? Because when a kid never thinks about the future, it's really hard for them to succeed. So that's what Kids at Hope is. It's a philosophy where we're just trying to engage everyone in saying, we want to be a community where all of our kids can succeed.
You know, it's funny. I obviously I know about Kids at Hope, heard, you know, but I did not realize. So the Executive Roundtable actually started Kids at Hope.
Well, it was started nationally in Arizona. The founder is Rick Miller. Around 2006, I think the executive director Christine Epps and others from the Roundtable
decided we should
found out about Kids at Hope, and they said, wow, this is really aligned with what we're trying to do here, engaging the entire community in supporting kids. And so they brought Kids at Hope to St. Lucie County, and since then the city of Fort Pierce and the city of Port St. Lucie have both adopted resolutions to be Kids at Hope communities, as has St. Lucie County, and we've trained thousands of people in the philosophy of Kids at Hope, thousands of teachers and custodians and janitors, everyone that comes in contact with our kids. Last week we did some site visits at 3 of the schools that are Kids at Hope schools, and it was really just amazing to hear the kids talk about what it means to be at a Kids at Hope school, what it means to know that all the adults on campus believe in you, what it means to articulate what you want your future to look like, what you want your educational future to look like, your home future, your hobbies, you know, your community future. It was really, really profound. And so Kids at Hope is one of the greatest things that we do.
Well, you have certainly done your homework and gotten up to speed for just being the executive director for 6 months. Oh, my goodness. I have tons more questions, but what is it? I have to ask this, being you know, what has it been a hard transition for you to leave the courtroom and that, you know, prosecuting crimes to this, or is it just, have you found your calling?
In some ways, it's been hard because I think there's always that part of you, whether it's the financial aspect of what you're leaving, or just not really being as involved with your peers, your colleagues, and what's going on. So in that sense, it's been somewhat difficult, but for me, the blessings have far outweighed any of the challenges. I mean, I really feel like I've found something that I am sort of appointed and anointed to be doing. You know, it makes me excited. I love it. You know, whenever things are busy, if we're doing a conference or we're applying for a grant and everyone's stressed out, I'm like, this is not stress.
Yeah, let me tell you about stress. Trying a human trafficking case with 15 co-defendants.
Exactly. Nobody speaks English. And that is stress, right? So
30 translators.
Exactly.
No, I know,
So it's just very exciting for me. It's something very new, something very different, but it really resonates with what my passions and interests have always been. I mean, all of my friends, when they knew I was taking the job and they found out what it was, they weren't surprised at all. This is, I think, the type of work I was born to do.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so let's go back to the Roundtable and all the great things that they have done in the past, and I'm sure with your leadership will do in the future. What in a nutshell, you talked about earlier the common agenda. What would you say is the common agenda?
Well, in 2014, as a result of a lot of the escalating violence, the leaders of the Roundtable came together.
And by the way, I have to comment on that because We have been, our office has been just inundated with, you know, I'm sure, as you know, actual numbers of crimes have decreased, even though it's counterintuitive with the recession and all of that, but crime is down, so to speak.
Right.
But violent crime, murders, oh my goodness. I mean, it's just, it's overwhelming. And that is something that, you know, we tend to have a bright star happen and say, okay, crime's down, this is great, and we pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, we're doing the right. And I'm sure it's because of initiatives like Kids at Hope and things like that that have made that crime rate, you know, go down. But, you know, that is the elephant in the room. I mean, you know, serious crimes are up. I mean,
really, really
especially in this community. But anyway, okay, go ahead.
Well, and it's, you know, for me, having personally experienced having a family member victimized by violent crime over 10 years ago, then to have returned to the community and see us crying and wailing and gnashing of teeth on this same issue is just really personally a tragedy for me.
Right.
And so in 2014, the Roundtable leaders came together and they said, look, we've accomplished a lot of things. We've accomplished in the areas of teen pregnancy. When I was in high school here, one out of 6 women, girls in high school just popped up pregnant. Now, you know, I think last year the data showed us that we didn't have one girl in St. Lucie County under the age of 14 have a baby.
Wow.
That was commonplace when I was in high school in the 90s, right?
I know.
And that's because of a lot of the collaboration and the work of all the partners on the round table. Same thing with AIDS. We led the state
at capital of the
right in new AIDS cases. So the roundtable looked at the successes and said, we see what we can accomplish when all of us are working together, but we have this escalating violence against youth and against adults. And so they said that violence against young people is the #1 priority for the roundtable to address as of 2014.
Right.
And as I said, we went to the training by the Gang Center and came back and looked at the model, and it's called the Comprehensive Gang Model, and said, we really think this is a good fit for our community because it starts with the collaboration of all the leaders coming together.
Right.
And there's 5 strategies to it. Community mobilization, which is engaging your residents, your pastors, your churches, even your gang members, your youth. Yeah. Right, you got to engage them in trying to solve this problem. Jobs and opportunities provision is the second strategy. Personally, I think that is one of the biggest strategies we have to work on. It's hard to say to these kids, you can make the right choices. You don't have to turn to drugs and violence and that sort of thing. And then when they want to make that choice, there's no job. They can't read. You know, they can't, if they get in trouble and they come back out, not only can they not vote, but they can't work anywhere. And they can't,
you're not going to get a job. You're not going to,
all of those things. So as a community, we have to make sure we're providing jobs, opportunities, and skills. Another core strategy, which is an exciting piece, which is something one of the things we haven't done well as a county, is the intervention component. We do prevention really well. You know, Kids at Hope, and I think our community, summer programs, I mean, we do a lot of prevention, our churches. But when the kids get to a certain age where they're really acting out, prevention itself isn't really going to cut it. So what the model really brings to bear is the intervention component, and that's actually hiring street outreach workers. Right. You know, people who, in many cases, have gone through these things themselves. People who these young people can relate to. People who understand the culture on the streets and understand the issues on the streets. That we would hire that can reach out to these young people and build connections with them. Now, there. Cities like Boston and other places that have done street outreach worker programs before, one challenge they've had, though, is, yes, you may have an outreach worker connecting with these kids on the ground. And when I say kids, I mean 16 to 24, right? Young people.
Yeah.
Right. They're connecting with them on the ground, but then they're running into barriers at the top level. So it's fine to have an outreach worker, But if he can't help you get a job,
yeah, what good is
what's the point?
Right.
So the model really takes that outreach worker, street worker component and ties it with an organization like the Roundtable, leaders who actually can make jobs happen for these kids.
Oh, I got you.
You know,
okay.
leaders who actually can open up GED classes and technical assistance classes for them, and says, so we're going to take the street level and the leadership level and have them work together to form a plan to really give these kids, you know, a real opportunity at life. So the model is very exciting. You got community mobilization, jobs and opportunities, intervention, suppression. Suppression is a big, big piece of this. You know,
what do you mean? Yeah.
Really working with law enforcement in a targeted way to make sure we are utilizing community policing strategies to really get to our serious offenders.
Right.
We have done, since I've been in the Roundtable over the past 6 months, we've been doing a community-wide assessment. Surveys, we've done focus groups with over 200 teenagers, about 100 adults. We're doing more to talk to people who live in Lincoln Park. The number one issue that comes up over and over again is that people do not feel safe. They don't feel safe. So when it looks like there are high levels of violent crime, murders right next door, and it looks like they're going unsolved or people are not being arrested, it's very hard to get most of the community residents who are law-abiding citizens and just want to live life peaceably.
Right.
It's hard to get them engaged in anything because they don't want to look like they're snitching.
Right.
They don't want to look like they're, you know, working with law enforcement.
Yeah.
And so the whole law enforcement system for that community breaks down.
Yeah,
you know,
I was going to say.
You or I may feel safe wherever we live.
Right.
But we've talked to hundreds of people, especially young people. And it's very interesting.
And when you're talking, again, when you're talking about young people in this scenario, what age groups?
Our focus groups have been mostly ages 14 to 18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That we've talked to through organizations like PAL, Boys and Girls Club, Save Our Children, Frontline for Kids, Men of the Sword Outreach. We've basically gone to every after-school program for teenagers and talked to them. And it was really interesting because for many of them, it was the first time anyone had come to them.
And got their opinion.
And got their opinion.
Yeah.
And what we found is that the closer you got into some of our really hot spot areas where we're seeing a lot of the violent crime, the more, the less likely the kids were to have positive relationships with law enforcement or to want to participate at all in crime solving.
Right.
I mean, we talked to kids who were literally mortified. I would, you know, they all know the phrase snitches get stitches. And they say they've seen that, you know. So the suppression component, and, you know, I'm talking about smart law enforcement, working with the community policing, making sure you're getting the high-risk, seriously violent offenders, because we know that not every gang member has shot somebody.
Oh, right.
You know, I mean, even the ones, you know, who do the teardrops.
Yeah, right,
you know, at least I know that from my experience in law enforcement, and you know that from your experience. Right. But the very dangerous ones have to be suppressed. That activity has to be suppressed so that the rest of the community can feel safe.
Wow. And what's the, what's the final? Yeah, we're almost out of time. Can you believe this? Oh, God.
The fifth strategy is organizational change and development. And really that's just about organizations thinking outside the box.
Right.
You know, ministers seeing themselves as having a role in law enforcement. Officers seeing themselves as having a role with working with kids, you know.
Right.
Prosecutors and public defenders seeing themselves as having a role outside the courtroom.
Sure.
You know, and that is one thing that St. Lucie County has always done really well.
Right. Right.
And we're just going to keep moving forward with that strategy as well.
Wow. Well, you've got a big job on your hands. You certainly, oh my gosh. Any idea, and like as I said a minute ago, we're almost out of time, but any particular goals? You know, I know your plate is full, but any particular goal that you want to see reached while you are executive director?
My biggest goal is to launch this Anti-Gang Strategy and to launch it well. We're in the process of hiring a director for the program.
Okay.
And that will be funded by a grant that the city of Fort Pierce received from the Office of Juvenile Justice.
Okay.
And then after that, we'll be hiring our outreach workers, and that will be funded by a grant from Allegheny Franciscan Ministries. That is launching the Common Good Initiative. They picked Lincoln Park as an area to invest millions of funds over the next couple of years. So my short-term goal...
Oh, I had, that's funny because I forgot about that. Yeah, so you're going to work hand in hand with Allegheny because they are going to...
Yes, they've said they're going to fund the outreach workers.
Wow.
Which is huge.
Yeah. Okay.
And so my short-term goals is to hire the staff, make sure we get the right people, because we know you can have a good program and wrong people, and it's not going to work. Yeah. Just like you can have a wrong program and good people, and it's not going to work. So we're trying to get good program, good people. And the long-term goal, and it's not a magic bullet. It's not going to, we're not going to see the results maybe, in a few days or a few months. But the long-term goal is, when I'm done with this job, whenever that will be, I want to say I helped launch something that really affected the youth in our community, the youth on the streets, the youth in the gangs, and actually saved lives. That's what this is all about.
Oh, boy. Well, I think, I think you can do it. And I'll tell you, you, with your background, what a unique perspective you bring to the Roundtable. Oh, my gosh. Because, I mean, you've seen it from, as a prosecutor in the courtroom. You know things about, criminal behavior that most executive directors of, would not have the advantage to have.
Definitely.
How have people must be responding to you? I mean, with open. I mean,
it has been just phenomenal. I mean, it's just been the love and the support. Every person I've talked to, every agency, let us know how we can help. I mean, we went to the hospitals. We went to Lawnwood Hospital and spoke with the CEO there about the gang strategy.
Oh, yeah, who was wonderful.
And he was so supportive, excited. He talked about what they see at the hospitals when people come in and have been shot. And even their security concerns sometimes, when victims and their families are there. So I just think this is the right time. I think this is the right time for this.
No, it is. And as we said earlier on the show, there is no better place than right here to make something great like that happen.
Definitely. We can do it.
Oh, absolutely. I have total faith in you. And welcome aboard. Thank you for your enthusiasm. You are going to do a great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.